Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the GCSUNScast. I'm your host Shane. Joining me on the line is Tom, and we've done it, Tom. We've hit 50 episodes and we celebrated in spectacular fashion. Last week, I think it went off without a hitch. Our second show, the Thursday night show, was quite successful, and we had some good feedback coming in from our attempt at live commentary.
Yeah, it was a fun week to be able to get on and keep up with a bit of fresh news too, wasn't it? We had a week is a long time in footy, as they say, and seemingly every day new things came up to discuss. And even since we last spoke on Sunday, big news for the club that we kind of anticipated but weren't really sure about. Yeah,
we'll get to that in a sec. Our live commentary, I was quite happy with that. There were some logistical issues at one point. I think the first quarter I couldn't hear any commentary from the TV. And you were on a bit of a delay because you were streaming the game. But besides that, we had good interaction from Mr. Bods and Old Soul, keeping us honest. And to be quite honest, if I was watching that game without any sort of commentary from us and listening to the commentary produced by Channel 7 or Fox, I probably wouldn't have been too happy with it. It was very Hawthorn biased, and I think in the end, despite the result, we chose a good game to have a crack at doing our own commentary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Hawthorn's the kind of opponent that they don't need to get, better stats or touch the ball as many times as you do to still put a big win on you. So for me, it was instructional, given that it was you and I sort of, dissecting what was going on as it was going on, rather than when you're just watching the footy and you're listening to the biased AFL commentators. As you mentioned, once you did get their live feed, their live commentary, you were cringing because it seemed like they couldn't let a minute go by without mentioning Jared Roughhead and this and that and whatever. And the umpires were in on the game as well. If we had our own commentary and our own umpires, I think it might have been a bit closer.
Yeah. Anyone that didn't listen to the live commentary and wants to find it, it's not available on our YouTube or podcast channels. But if you go onto our Spreaker page on the internet, you'll be able to find the quarter-by-quarter breakdowns. And it's up to you if you want to try and sync that up with maybe a replay on KO Sports or Foxtel and watch it in your own time. If you haven't seen the game, it might be a unique way to watch the game or even rewatch it. Although there wasn't too many highlights from the Suns, and we'll get back into that later. Before we move on to the news, I'd like to thank our Patreon donors Old Soul, Jack Stad, Paul Vosti, Tom Kim, Chris Moore, Brody Burgess, Kate Kelland, James Wood, and Tony. So, taste of what we could offer last week with our showcase, and we've been rewarded. Kate's jumped on and joined our Patreon sponsors. So, thank you, Kate. All right, Tom. Well, let's jump into the news. Now, the biggest news coming out of the club this week is the retirement of Michael Rischitelli, and we've got a bit of audio to play here.
So thank you very much, and I've just got one more favour to ask this week, and that's still one game left. And if you can get me a W, that would be the icing on the cake for me. So thank you.
So that was a touching bit of a clip from a video that the Suns put out on their website, with Michael Rischitelli telling the playing group his retirement, and it's such a sad, emotional speech from Michael. You can completely understand why he'd be so upset, and we're upset as well. Not too many fans would have watched that and not felt a ping of sadness inside of them.
No, I mean, look, Rish is a legend, and we've only got a handful of players who were around from the very beginning, and you know, when the young players leave to go for success elsewhere, it's a bitter feeling. But when a player has come to the end of his career because he had, you know, half his career at another club, so we've got Jared Harbour as, you know, the next guy to qualify in that way. But we may have plenty of those to come. But yeah, Rischa's the one who's been there from the beginning, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. I said to you off the air that he's arguably the only Gold Coast Suns legend that we've had to retire. There aren't too many others I can think of. Actually, there's none I can think of that would even qualify for that. We've had retirements in the past, but none from players have delivered anywhere near this amount of time and dedication to the football club. Rischitelli was an inaugural signing with one of the concessions the Suns received, and quite a shock to get him from the Brisbane Lions the year that he'd won a best and fairest for them. But he's been a great contributor to the Gold Coast Suns. And
well, Shane, I can give a bit of insight on that comment, because as listeners may recall, and I'm sure there's plenty of listeners who are in the same boat as me, I'm an original Brisbane Bears supporter. Obviously, when they became the Lions, I kept supporting them. So I remember when Rischitelli was first drafted by the Lions, because something that people who followed the Lions back then, I know you don't particularly, but people who followed the Lions back then, their drafting in the premiership years and in the couple of years before the premiership years was not strong. And even when they did bring in decent players, they tended to go to other teams because they just had such a stacked list. So Michael Rischitelli, his first year was 2004. So can you imagine being a player, young player, 17-year-old, being drafted to a club that's just won 3 flags in a row, and in his first year he managed to play a game. So he would have felt very much of a part of that grand final era, even though he was only a young fella. And I think a lot of that's rubbed off on him, because that was a sensational team and full of quality people. And, you know, a couple of years later, so you mentioned that he won the best and fairest. He actually won 2 best and fairest in a row at Brisbane and then came to the Gold Coast. And people might remember that around that time was the Fev trade. And after he won the first best and fairest, Brisbane tried to trade him to bloody Carlton, and he just went, why is this happening? I can't believe it. And then he said, no, I don't want to go to Carlton. And he stayed at the Lions, got another, you know, he was on their shopping list. So he just went, right, I'm going to go down the road, going to the Gold Coast. So they did us a bloody massive favour.
Yeah, it was. I was really impressed by securing Rischitelli, and I was actually quite hopeful with Jared Brennan as well, but that turned out to be less of an inspired pick. But Rischitelli, he's been an absolute club legend, and I think it would be great if the Suns could get him a win, like you mentioned in that video. And yeah, it would be even better if we can get the Metricon Stadium full force of Suns fans just showing their respect for him. This will be the last game that he runs out in Suns colours on the field. So, yeah, all the best to Michael Rischitelli and his family, and what his future holds.
Well, I mean, there's the great mystery there. He holds his cards pretty close to his chest, and I guess not being an AFL state, the media haven't really been too pushy with him, or no sort of insiders have leaked information about what he wants to do. So whether he just decides to take it easy for a few years and start his own business, or whether he seeks a coaching role at the club, or whether he goes to the local league, the Quaffle or something like that, we just don't know. I'll tell you what, I'd really love to see him take on an assistant coaching role at the Suns and remain a part of the setup, and potentially even play a half a dozen or more games in the Needful next year, but we just don't know, do we?
No. All right, well, let's move on to the injury news. And it's injury news because there is no injury news. In a positive spin for Gold Coast Suns fans, the only news coming out of the Suns tonight with their injuries is Sam Day suffered some migraines by the end of that game from his head knock. And he has pulled up well, so they're anticipating he'll train this week and be available for selection. And similar story with Jack Martin. He copped a knee last week and didn't pull up quite right. He's pulled up fine this weekend and again should resume full training and be available to play this weekend. So no other news there. Oh, the other player is...
Well, there's two more changes there, and they're weird. So Mitch Reard's been ruled out for the rest of the season. He was a chance at being back this week, but obviously they're just calling it early. But they're saying Cal Archie is a week away. A week away from what? So I do not trust the injury list. I never have. I hope we don't get into trouble over that. But the news that Mitch Reardon won't be even considered for Needful this week. Bad luck for him with that injury because he had a few good games for us. If we see Cal Archie back, I doubt it will be in the AFL. So hopefully he can be like Rankin and just come back in for a bit of a cameo and light things up. But, he had a pretty significant injury, so you kind of doubt that. The person who's not on the injury list, of course, is Braden Crossley. So if you add things up, there are 10 players gone for the season. Martin sounds like he's back in contention this week. Archie and Crossley not. So there are 36 players who are available for AFL and Needful, which is about par for the last few weeks. So, yeah, not too much change, but little things.
All right, well, one player that could possibly make his debut this week against the Giants at Metricon Stadium is Isaac Rankin. He's pulled up quite well from his hip injury and recovered quite well from pulling up after this game. So, and he had quite a spectacular game, didn't he? For a bloke that spent as much time on the sidelines as he has. Well, let's get into the Needful Report, and you can tell us all about the Rankin show. So, Sydney Gold Coast Suns defeated the Sydney Swans reserve side 9 goals, 761 to 13 goals, 1896. So a 35-point win for the Gold Coast Suns. Connor Nutting had 4 goals. Peter Wright had 2 goals. Young had 32 disposals, 8 marks, 5 tackles. Jesse Joyce had 22 disposals. Peter Wright, 16 disposals, 9 marks. And Isaac Rankin, 14 disposals, 9 tackles and 1 goal.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Nutting and Wright could have had more goals, although tricky conditions for scoring goals. A lot of goals scored from close range, and even then, Peter Wright had a shot at goal from 10 metres out that he missed. But it was a goal face that just had this howling wind coming out of it. Terrible stadium, Tramway Stadium. It's just, I'm surprised that they've said that it's Needful standard. But then again, what's Needful standard? No, look, it was a great game to watch. In retrospect, we wondered if maybe it would have been a good game for us to commentate because the Suns haven't had much luck getting commentary lately, so there's not even a choice. But anyway, the 2 players I'd really like to, well, I'm gonna change my mind there. The 4 players that I'd really like to highlight here are Aaron Young, best on ground, not even a doubt about that. 30 touches. Aaron Young is such a tough nut. He's fearless into the contest, and you really can't really, the Needful is a standard of game where obviously it's a notch below AFL, but players are hard at this level, and he's one of the Suns who can stand up. He's stranded on 99 games, Shane. So, does he get a game this week? Well, I'll keep going. Connor Nutting had 6 or 7 shots on goal, ended up with the 4 goals. Could have been more. He's been on fire this year. He's had 20-plus goals. He's not even a forward, but he's such a quality player that putting him in the forward line has meant often he's the targeted player, and he's not a big guy. And he takes great marks. He pressures the ball, creates opportunities for other players. He's just so lively in that forward 50 that he wouldn't be out of place. And, we drafted him, in the... it was in the 3rd round, I guess. But, he's an AFL drafted player, and he's played the best part of 2 seasons in the Needful. He's in line for an AFL debut. And another bloke I'm going to mention, and you've already mentioned Isaac Rankin. I can't speak highly enough of him. But Sam Fletcher. Now, these 3 players were named in our best, and if they would get the points from me. The Young for 3, Nutting for 2, and Sam Fletcher for 1 in the Needful performance. All 3 of those guys could play against the Giants, and Isaac Rankin, chuck him in there as a wild card.
Okay. So, yeah, I think Young is certainly earning his stripes. He should be a fair chance to get a recall. It's just a matter of who he replaces. And I think if Sam Day doesn't pull up, or they have any concerns over Sam Day whatsoever, give him a rest and give Peter Wright a run. I thought he was quite good. He played more of the role that the Suns expect him to play, that forward ruck role.
He played much closer to goal this week than last week, and that's why the goals were there. But because the Suns sort of, it wasn't a lesser opponent. Brisbane is just, the kings of the Needful at the moment. So Wright didn't get a whole lot of chances close to goal last week. But this week, he certainly did. He'll want a few of his shots back because, there were double shots that he missed. But the main thing was he was putting himself in a position to shoot those goals. And I'm quite critical of Tramway Stadium because wind isn't a factor in stadiums, but Tramway Stadium's not a stadium. It has tunnel winds. It's right next to a highway. Helicopters going over. Like, the wind factor just ruined accurate goal kicking. So Wright could have had a 5-goal game, and as well as around 20 hit-outs and being like a dominant force on the ground. Okay.
All right. Well, I think Wright's definitely ready to come back in if he performs like that again. But he doesn't have another game to prove it. So if he doesn't make the cut this week, he's just going to hold his head high and perform well in the Needful and reset for next year.
Well, he signed on an extension, and he's very much a part of our future. I've said it last week. I'll say it again. I believe the coaching staff have basically gone back to him and said, "Look, you're our ruck forward, and in order to do that, you're going to have to get better at both. And we no longer believe that you have to choose between one or the other, because we got Jared Witts, and his second ruck. I mean, if Witsy went down." So he's not second ruck because Nichols has had a good season. So if Witsy went down, they'd bring Nichols in. So they're able to sort of say, look, 2 metre Peter, you're in line to be the backup ruckman, and that's what we want you to be. But you got to basically adapt to the game plan a little better. I think he does a lot of things really well, but in such a young side, he's quite often has these quiet games, and it exposes him, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. All right, is there anyone else you want to touch on the Needful, or should we move straight into the AFL?
Just one player, Shane. Josh Corbett was tremendous. He was leading up the ground, marking absolutely everything, putting 100% effort in. He's a real effort player. I think he basically he may be in consideration for this week. I don't know, but I think with another preseason in him and having that ability to really be amongst things, because if you recall, Corbett had this sort of interrupted start to the season, and I just feel like he's only now getting that synergy with the Needful guys. Another preseason and injury-free, he'll be really leading up for top 22 selection next year. He's an improver.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the AFL game. Gold Coast Suns played Hawthorn in what was Jared Ruffhead's farewell. It's probably the 100th time you've heard that phrase. Hawthorn defeated Gold Coast Suns 18 goals 10, 118 to 7 goals 6, 48. So that's a 70-point flogging. Now, we mentioned we won't dwell too much on this game because I think we had enough of our say throughout that commentary. But just for those not listening, we'll give a quick summary. I thought the Suns' effort and intensity in that game was quite good. And looking at the statistics, it backs up the point that we were winning the clearances, we were winning the contested ball. In the end, what really killed us was our turnovers and allowing Hawthorn so many intercepts. Yeah.
Look, Shane, we won or drew practically every major stat. Disposals, we had 2 less disposals. That's not a 70-point loss. We won the free kicks. We won the clearances at the centre and the stoppages. We were down in 2. Well, you mentioned turnovers, and that's the reason we lost. But we had 35 inside 50s, and they had 66. So it wasn't quite just turnovers. It was where we had the possession. So we had a lot of possession in our back half of the field, and you can't kick goals from there. And they made 18 marks inside 50, and we made 7. And so you can't kick goals if you're not marking the ball inside 50. So just a couple of metrics, and it's amazing. I think we're only a few players short of really narrowing that 70-point gap against the same opponent. What do you reckon?
I think so. I've been thinking about it today. There's a lot of correlation between the Gold Coast Suns and Brisbane. At least that's what everyone in the media is saying. They're all saying, they've just got to follow the Brisbane model, follow this. Now, the Brisbane, it all shows in their percentage. So you look back to what their percentage was last year, and they were fairly competitive in most games, like the Suns have been for a majority of this year. Now, I think if the Suns were able to maintain that competitiveness and get a similar result to what we were getting at the start of the season to the end of the season, so in other words, wipe out a bunch of those 70, 80, 90-point defeats that we've suffered in the last 6 to 8 weeks, then our percentage reflects that a bit more and would be more on track to what Brisbane have had. And, that's when teams, don't have quite the maturity to get over the line and get the win, but they're there hanging in and being close in games for a majority of those games. Now, the Suns aren't quite there just yet. We've seen half a season of them doing that. Hopefully next year they get into the, another fitness preseason into them. Players are committed to the club. By next year, we would have gotten rid of everyone that's not committed. And as mentioned on the Inside 50 podcast this week, it's really quite a club that's being built on culture. All the building blocks for the cultures there. Players enjoy the club, and despite being 17 straight losses, they're still signing up. So with that in mind, I think next year the Suns are going to make another jump and be competitive throughout the whole year. So we shouldn't be seeing these 10-goal plus losses. And hopefully we'll snag a few extra wins. And then the next year, so 2021, I think is the year that we could really make that big leap and jump up the ladder, similar to the way Brisbane has and teams in the past have as well.
Well, I like what you say, Shane, and I think the only thing I really have to add to that is that it needn't be that we're a year behind the Lions. I like to think we are, because obviously we'd like to see success sooner than later. But what we don't have, and our opponent GWS, which we'll talk about later, they have a similar problem to us, and it's really presenting itself at the moment, and that is that we simply don't have players aged between 27 and 30, and that's a 4 year plus deficit that we don't have. And the reason we don't have it is because we've only been around for 9 years. So if you've got a bunch of 18-year-olds who started in that first season, that they're not very old. They're 26, 27. And everyone you brought in between then, well, we didn't have a very good recruiting season the year after we came in because GWS got given everything. And GWS have had a very good recruiting season every year they've been in. But guess what? They have a real lack of players in that 26 to 30-year-old age bracket. So they're being shown up at the moment because they're being forced to play so many of their younger guys like we are, but they're a class above us because of the quality of players. Not going to go into that aspect of it, but you see what I mean? Like we just don't have those guys. Like Steele Sidebottom's a good player, but this last year and this year, he's been regarded as an elite midfielder, or if not elite, then approaching elite and able to hold his place as one of the better. I think he might have been All-Australian last year. So, or if not close to, or maybe All-Australian 40. So until we start getting those players who really hit their peak in their late 20s, which a lot of players tend to do, we're kind of dead in the water. So another year, we're going to do well next year. We're not going to finish last again. That's just not going to happen. It's not footy. That's not the pattern, how it goes. We will have a surge. Whether we go up to the finals or not, I'm quite happy if 2021's the year where we make finals for the first time. And if 2025 is the first time that our premiership window opens, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Okay. All right. Well, let's finish off chat about the game. Now, we said at halftime we listed our top 3 vote getters, and I think the context of the game changed a bit in that second half. The Suns actually won a quarter in that third quarter. It's a bit sad that at this stage of our history with the Suns, we're still celebrating finally winning a quarter, and it was only by 1 point, by the way, as well. But yeah, we've got to take the small wins where they are.
I think it was a much truer reflection of the game. I think, do you remember how many times you said free kick Hawthorn?
Yeah, I was trying to build that hashtag back up again and get a bit of a trend going. Because as you know, you're the Twitter warrior here. You've been having some Hawthorn players, some Hawthorn fans having a crack at you.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, there's not much pushback from the Suns, so someone's got to do it. But
well, that's why I got banned on Facebook. I can't access any of the Suns stuff on Facebook. I'm too supportive.
It's not really the Suns, though. It's a Suns fans site page, and we've got our own, haven't we? So the fact is that free kicks do not have to be equal. But the umpires tend to try and make it that way. And I think the Suns got given practically every free kick the Suns got given, it was legitimate. And there were free kicks there that were non-calls that the Suns deserved. And there were free kicks that the Hawks got that the players were looking around going, what's the whistle for? And when the Hawks got it, they laughed and just went, oh, yeah, cool, it's our night. So it doesn't explain the deficit, Shane, but it does explain how the Suns let these 10 to 12 goal margins get out. Because when free kick after free kick, like a couple of examples,
with the bounces.
Do you remember any that really stood out?
Well, it was a consistent theme with the bounces being recalled if they were in the Suns' favour, because the bounces quite often were either going to the left or to the right of the centre circle, not in the middle, and they'd always be recalled.
Had the advantage in the stoppages, like that. That was something that we won 15 centre clearances to 8, so it could have been a lot more. And those are 12-point turnarounds, because when they get recalled and the Hawks go up and kick a goal, well, could be the ones who are benefiting from it and going forward and kicking a goal of their own. So, you have 3 of them.
Anyway, let's
35-point difference instead of a 70-point difference.
Yeah, let's look at our top 3 vote getters. So, for 1 vote, I reckon Lockie Weller. He had 7 rebound 50s, had I think 29 disposals. He had a great day out as the attacking weapon that he is.
Yeah, and this is Lockie Weller in the form that he was in before he got injured. And he's taken a little while to get back to this form. Not a knock on him. It's just that's how footy goes. He was very efficient. I couldn't really split him and Harbrow. So Harb's got my 1 vote, and Weller got my 2 votes. But I could very easily, interchange them. Weller seems to be the guy who, if and when Harbs retires, and I'd like to see Harbrow play another 5 years on the game that he played and some of the brilliant performances from this year. He's got another year to go in his contract. I hope they extend him as long as he wants to play. But I just loved seeing Lockie Weller. So, yeah, 1 for Harbs and 2 for Weller. Who'd you have for 2?
Yeah, for my 2 votes, I gave it to player of the round, Braden Fiorini. He had a complete performance, 30 disposals, 17 uncontested, and 16 contested. Hang on, the maths doesn't add up there. 17 plus 16 is 33.
What it means is he got caught with the ball, not necessarily holding the ball, but yeah, those don't always add up.
Yep. Possessions compared to disposals. Yep, I get you.
Yeah, so he's gotten the ball, and I don't recall him getting held with the ball 3 times, but it may have been once or twice. Might have been 3 times, because there were a few of those calls where you're scratching your head.
He didn't have any frees against, so it maybe the disposal just wasn't counted. Maybe it was just the ball got tackled free or something.
He could have been tackled into touch. Yeah, could have taken it out of bounds.
So Fiorini had 7 clearances, and just a great effort to get into that midfield and clear the ball out. And just as much as he was clearing it out, he was on the other end receiving it. The only knock on his game was he had a 53% disposal efficiency. Yeah. So if he could have upped that a bit more, he would have been quite the damaging player.
Which, I mean, it does tend to happen with some of our ball magnets. Is that they're getting a lot of the pill inside under huge amounts of pressure, and all it takes is those hack kicks forward and a few hand passes, and their percentage really gets affected. But look, wasn't it great to see Swallow, Weller, Miller, Fiorini, Harbrow, and Hanley all get high possessions? I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last time we had that many players being in the midfield, rotating through, getting just fantastically high numbers. Look, I'm going to go straight in and say that Pierce Hanley gets my 3 votes. And the reason for that is that he, all game, 4-quarter effort, he was just everywhere. Pierce tends to sort of stand out sometimes for his clangers, and he always makes clangers. He had 4 clangers, and his disposal efficiency wasn't especially high nor low, but he was just super creative and just making things happen between. He was in defensive 50, he was in attacking 50, and everywhere in between, and it was just great. Last week I was questioning whether Hanley deserves another contract, and he's come out and just shown what he can do. Just imagine a couple of our players back from injury and Hanley still capable of that performance with a bunch of other guys who are really dominating the opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And my 3 votes goes to Jared Harbrow, and it's pretty much along similar lines to you. Yeah. I think the difference was Jared Harbrow just looks more flashy and more skillful when he's got the ball. That he just stands out a bit more. So I think that's why I decided to go with Harbrow for the 3 votes. But it was a great performance. Like you said, there was about 5 or 6 Suns players that were around that 30 disposal mark. And that's something that we haven't seen for quite a while. So it does show that the Suns had quite a good game. But
it just, there wasn't the final connection.
No.
There's just so many plays where just that one last pass needs to stick, or that inside 50, or the kick before the inside 50 kick, or the hand pass or whatever. And it was Hawthorn's pressure and experience that prevented the Suns from reaching their potential in this game, because the game was there to be won, except for the fact that the Hawks just scored so easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we haven't done this for a while, Tom, because we've struggled to find a moment worthy of it, but we've actually come up with, there's two moments I think we could use this what a performance moment for, and the first one is the man himself, Lockie Weller. A beautiful right foot snap for goal from about 50 metres out, just running in, kicked a great goal when it wasn't expected.
And we if we had one of them per game from Weller, we'd go a lot closer to winning a lot of games.
We would, yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that really just nail the opposition, don't they?
They do.
Bloody love, because when you see him getting that ball in that zone and you can see he's got a clear path, because he doesn't like to run straight at goal and kick it. He likes to just wheel around on his right, and if no one's blocking his way, it's a goal. And he can kick him from beyond the paint. And as long as there's someone in the goal square kind of shepherding it in, he can kick him from 60.
Yeah.
So, but what was your other...
Well, I think the moment that deserves it is this one.
Lockie Weller, what a performance!
That's the teamwork goal. I believe Witts knocked it out of the ruck on the wing, tapped it down to Ainsworth, who handed it to Fiorini, who hands it back to Ainsworth. Ainsworth runs down, kicks a beautiful kick onto the chest of Ben King, and Ben King kicks a lovely goal. So it just sort of highlighted the future that the Suns have. Some of these young players teaming up, working together to make the Hawks pay.
Ben Brown kicked 10 goals on the weekend, and you can just see in the next few years, you can see Ben King kicking 10 goals, can't you?
He certainly can. He's proven quite a few times already this year. He's played, less than a dozen games, I think, and he's already had a bag of 4, I think. That was his Rising Star week. He's looked like he could get to that stage a couple of times again already. Just a bit of inaccurate kicking as well.
I think the crowd on the weekend. I mean, we didn't really talk about it on the live commentary, and I wasn't listening at all. But the crowd, like what I've read about and heard about since in the highlights and whatnot, the crowd was 32,000 people there, and they were all one-eyed Hawks. I mean, that explains to me why the Suns had quite a few problems with set shots in gettable positions earlier in the game when it did matter, and why Ben King had 1 goal too when he could have easily had 3. And if he had have gotten a couple of early goals, he might have been a bit more up and about. But there's no hiding a 70-point hiding. There's no hiding from it.
No, there isn't.
There are issues that need to be addressed. I'll tell you right now, we had 300 possessions at three-quarter time, and we were on track for 400, and we fell short of that. So I think there is still issues. They scored in that third quarter. They scored 5 goals to really put it to bed, and we only scored a couple. So we won the third quarter, and we ran out of juice. So another pre-season, more in the tank, more endurance, more strength, bigger and better. Really looking forward to it. But we've got one more game to go.
Absolutely.
Challenge accepted.
Now, we've got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask you a question which I reckon is going to fill up this episode. But before I do, we've got a couple of things. Next week, I think what we'll discuss, we'll talk about a bit of a season review in whole. It's the last episode for the season, and we'll discuss... Basically, I mean, we'll look back at our Facebook team that we picked at the start of the season and compare that to what we think is the best 22 now, despite the injuries. Right. And just a general look back at the season. I think after that, what we should do, Tom, is come back maybe at the end of every month, or at least once a month for an episode, just keeping up with what's going on at the Suns. We don't like to speculate on rumours during the show too much because, well, that's exactly what they are, rumours. But
I heard a really nice thing from Alistair Clarkson on AFL 360 last night. I'll just very quickly reiterate it. The reason that he didn't announce Jared Ruffhead's testimonial match was out of respect for the Gold Coast Suns. And I think that's a really important thing when discussing footy. You can say, people say, oh, this player's rubbish or the Suns were hopeless. And it's just really not. It's reductive. It doesn't do anyone any favours. The players who are on the list at the moment are all Suns, and there are going to be a few of them who aren't going to be with the club, and it's going to be announced pretty soon. Yeah. And respect to all of them, and we respect them as much as they deserve because, they're representing our team, whether it's at the top level or at the Needful, doesn't matter. They're part of the club. Well,
we are approaching the silly season. It's players coming in and players, of course, going out. Now, we don't always like the players leaving, but, we're all loyal. We want our Suns, the club, to survive and be as strong as possible.
Well, look at Southport Sharks. They've got 10 on the weekend. They had 10 former Suns playing for them.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're getting rid of players and they're going to the trash heap. They're going on to Tier 2 success. Others go into state and have successful careers there. So.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, I think near the end of September, probably just before the grand final, we'll do an episode, and I think that's going to be our rumour episode. We'll address a bunch of rumours, discuss whether we think it's fact or fiction, and what players could bring to the side. And then October, we'll have another episode, probably just after trade period, discussing the new players coming into the club. And
if anything happens, major that merits discussion, we'll certainly get on the blower. And even if it's just a short pod, if something major happens, like a player signing or a whatnot. We're certainly not going to abandon fans when they want to hear from us. But, we've got other methods too. We've got our Facebook page and Twitter, and we certainly like to hear from people while we're doing a podcast. So.
Yep. All right. Well, we've got a minute left. So, Tom, just quickly, should Isaac Rankin play this week?
Yes.
He should. Needful or AFL?
Terrific. He was terrific.
I should have mentioned that.
Time, and he still managed to just be a wizard.
Okay.
He should play every single game. Should never play Needful again.
Well, I think it would be a fantastic game, not only to send Rischitelli off, but to bring in Isaac Rankin and give him a debut.
Bring in Sam Fletcher. He's played
it would get some bums in seats.
Really good.
Having Rankin there and Rischitelli retiring, that would certainly get some bums in seats. So, I mean, Michael Whiting, on his analysis or preview of the Giants-Suns game, reckons that we'll be lucky to get over 7,000. So let's make it wrong, and Suns fans show out in full force to say farewell to club legend Michael Rischitelli, and hopefully hello to debutant Isaac Rankin, future star of the Suns. All right, Tom.
The match report, the match preview suggests that the Suns could win in a boil over.
Well, fingers crossed. Let's hope they do. All right, we've got to go, Tom. Thanks for tuning into the show. Go Suns.
Go Suns.